The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The Boston Celtics get a big win, an easy win, a big response, a championship response. Well, it's a 13-point win. It was not a 13-point game. They went up by 27. Now that 27-point lead got cut down to 24, and then it was back up to 21 pretty, I don't want to say quickly, but within relatively short order in the fourth quarter. And then the Celtics started taking like the 24-second violations, and the Knicks just kept shooting, kept trying to. I don't know. Maybe somebody bet a spread that, and they needed to. I don't know what that was. The Knicks. They just. I appreciate the Knicks. Maybe a never say die attitude or whatever, but they need to have a better grasp on reality. The reality is that the Celtics are back, and the Knicks are nowhere near as good as Boston. They are just not as good, and they're just not as good as maybe the best teams in the East. Like the Knicks made a big splash with the Karl Anthony Towns acquisition. Did that get them to, did I say top 3? Top 2 teams in the East, top 3 teams in the NBA. They have not beaten the Celtics. They have not beaten the Cavs. They have not beaten the Oklahoma City Thunder. They looked bad in the first half against the Celtics here in this game. They had a run in the third quarter where the Celtics, they got up 27 and they let up, and they gave the Knicks an opportunity to kind of come back and take advantage of things, right? Like Karl Anthony Towns started hitting a couple of shots, and I was joking around like Karl Anthony Towns must lead the NBA in scoring after his team goes down by 20. He just started to finally be aggressive, finally get some shots. The Celtics, I think, let up a little bit. And this is where the Knicks are. Like, the Knicks are good enough to torch a bad defense. They're not good enough to beat a Celtics level defense, and they cannot stop a Celtics level offense. That's for sure. Like, they sacrifice their defense in a big way to get the offense. And their offense is still not good enough to make the Celtics sweat, and their defense, the Celtics picked it apart. So the Celtics, I think, like, whatever you want to say about that December, that early January, that little stretch where they struggled, they were, just above 500 or whatever, that is gone. I think the Celtics have a pretty solid answer to that. They've now won 5 straight games where each of their 5 straight wins has been by at least 13 points. They've won 9 of their last 12 of their last 15. They've beaten the Knicks twice. They've beaten the Cavs over the last 7 games. The Celtics are, I think you can say, back. All of the questions about the swoon, I think those have been answered. The Celtics, I've talked about this a bunch. We've talked about it with Drew Carter. We talked about it with Tom Westerholm. We've gotten into the Celtics. Had a lot of things happen at the same time. They got Kristaps Porzingis back, and that took a little bit of time to get used to. Just getting him back up to speed. Derek White had a swoon there. He talked about, very openly, I lost my joy, he said, for the game for a little while. And now that's back, and he's his normal kind of freewheeling, fun-loving self. And all of these little things. Drew Holiday is back. I think he needed to ease into the season. All of these things, like the Celtics are back. Porzingis is back. Derek White is back. Holiday is back. Tatum's playing his best. Jaylen Brown, who wasn't feeling his best in this game, had a strong finish in the fourth quarter. The Celtics are back to their championship themselves. And you saw that in them building the 27-point lead, where it was just attacking Karl Anthony Towns, attacking Jalen Brunson, getting whatever they want. The Knicks really spent a lot of time working very, very hard to get contested, tough shots that they couldn't really finish. The Celtics came down and it was just a free-flowing offense, and they got basically whatever they wanted. They ran simple actions. They read the floor well, and it's a Sam Hauser 3? No problem. He's wide open. Whatever it was it a drive? Was it a kick? Was it a multiple pass? Whatever it was, the Celtics just came down and did what they had to do. Methodical. Just, we know where we're attacking. Everybody loves to talk about that killer whale offense. We know where we're attacking. We know who the SEALs are on that team. That's the Celtics at their absolute best. Even when Jalen wasn't shooting his best or playing his best, he was doing other things, defending, passing. Jason Tatum, defending, passing, doing everything. 1 assist shy of a triple-double. This Celtics team against the Knicks, like, it's funny. I see the sentiment out there that, oh my God, the Knicks have to do everything they can to avoid the Celtics in the second round. Well, they're 3 games up in the loss column against Indiana, and I think 5.5 games up overall on Indy. They're going to have to really go into the tank to avoid the Celtics in the second round. If that's, assuming everything goes according to plan, the Celtics are very likely going to be in their path, right? They're not going to get to the conference finals without going through the Celtics. And they're not going to get past the Celtics. The Boston Celtics are just significantly better than the New York Knicks. And I think this game, like, the third quarter is the only thing Knicks fans can sit there and kind of hang their hats on and say, well, we at least had that. We had that stretch where, they outscored the Celtics by 20 points after, I forget, it was over the last 8 minutes of the quarter. And like, yeah, I guess you have that. I guess you do. But the Celtics also outscored the Knicks by 27 up to that point, and then outscored you by 17 after that, before meaningless late quarter buckets to get things close. So I think this is the championship level Boston Celtics back in complete effect.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Cavs get another win, this one over the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's important.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Cleveland Cavaliers moved to 47-10 on the season with a win Sunday night. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies 129-123. They did so without Darius Garland, and winning a game against a really good team, which Memphis is a really good team. I don't buy them as title contenders, but they're 37-20. They're in second place in the West. They're having a really nice season. They've got a lot of really good players. We will talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. and his battle with Evan Mobley for Defensive Player of the Year. We'll dive into that. But beating a really good team without I think there's a case that Darius Garland has been the best player for the Cavs this year, but winning a game against a really good team without that guy in the lineup, I think is a big accomplishment. But what I think is a bigger accomplishment for the Cavs is the way they won this game. Not that they won it without Darius, but the way they won this game without Darius. So we've come to know the Cavs as a team that is an offensive juggernaut, and they didn't have, I guess, a bad night offensively. They weren't really good offensively. They did not shoot the ball well. And that's the thing that stood out to me, particularly in the first half. So Max Strus hit a three-pointer to beat the halftime buzzer that, put the Cavs, I believe it put them up by 6 points at halftime. And that was the first three-pointer that someone other than Donovan Mitchell made in the game. Donovan at that point was 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. The rest of the Cavs were 0 of their first 18 from 3. And that means typically not good things for the Cavs. When the Cavs don't shoot the ball well, and this is not a Cavs specific thing, this is an NBA specific thing. When NBA teams don't shoot the ball well, they don't win because you need to score points to win. So when the Cavs don't shoot the ball well from beyond the arc, they're typically a much more beatable team than when, say, they're shooting 40% from deep, which is what we've become more accustomed to seeing because they are such an offensive juggernaut. So for them to have a game where they really struggle to shoot the basketball, they finished the night, and of course they had a better second half shooting than they did a first half because it would have been hard to have just as bad of a second half as they did a first half and continue to talk about a win here. But they finished the game shooting 27.7% from beyond the arc. They were 13 of 47. Donovan Mitchell had 4 of those makes on 8 attempts. So that means the rest of the Cavs were 9 of 38 from beyond the arc. Sam Merrill did hit 1. Ty Jerome hit 3. I will talk about Ty Jerome, the great night he had. Max Strus hit 3. Evan Mobley hit 1. Isaac Okoro hit 1. So it was just not a very good night for the rest of the team shooting the ball beyond the arc. And the Cavs are a much more susceptible team to a defeat when that's the case. And the fact that they were able to find other ways to win is really what stood out to me about this one. Because defensively, they were okay. They were not great. Memphis shot the ball well. They were 15 of 39 from deep. They shot 45% from the floor. But what the Cavs did in this game is they rebounded. They rebounded the ball really, really well. Memphis came into the game as one of the better rebounding teams in basketball. They've got a lot of size. They start 2 bigs, just like the Cavs do. They start Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think they've got a little bit more size on the wing. Not that, Desmond Bane is great on the wing and doesn't have a super long wingspan, obviously. But I do think that they start a bigger starting lineup than what the Cavs starting lineup is right now with. And I guess tonight changes things because Darius Garland was not in it, but the typical Cavs starting 5. And they rebound the ball really well. The Cavs are an average rebounding team. Kenny Atkinson before the season talked about wanting to put an emphasis on offensive rebounding, and that really hasn't necessarily come to fruition. And part of that too, when you have this conversation about maybe not rebounding misses as frequently as you would like, is the Cavs don't miss a ton of shots. Like they're second in the NBA in field goal percentage. They are the best offense in the league. They don't miss a lot of shots. And when you don't miss a lot of shots, your offensive rebound opportunities, of course, are limited. Well, on Sunday night, they had 22 offensive rebounds. That was the reason why they won this game. They won this game not because they were a better team offensively. They won this game because they took more shots. They had 99 field goal attempts compared to 92 field goal attempts for the Grizzlies. And that was a really big deal in this game. It's not a game, I think, that they find a way to win unless they're able to attack the glass the way that they were. Memphis had 37 total rebounds. The Cavs had 57, so they out-rebounded them by 20, period. But the fact that they had 22 offensive rebounds in a game where Memphis had only 25 defensive rebounds. So the Cavs rebounded almost half of their misses, right? Like that to me is the crazy thing because that's not who this team has been. Jarrett Allen deserves a ton of credit for that. Evan Mobley deserves a ton of credit for that. He had 4 offensive rebounds. Max Strus had 4. Donovan Mitchell had 2. Dean Wade had 3. DeAndre Hunter had 2. Ty Jerome had 2. So it was a team effort. And to me, that is one of the things that stands out about this, is that when somebody goes down, and Darius Garland, and he was listed with a hip injury too for this game, but I don't think that it was really ever in the cards he was going to play. He was not present at shoot around when the media was let in on Sunday morning. He did not go through his pregame workout. Like, it was not some surprise when the starting lineup came out that, oh my gosh, Darius Garland's not in it. Like, this was not something that caught anyone off guard. But for the rest of the Cavs to step up and play the way that they did in his absence, especially by being able to do the little things, I think to me that's the sign of a really great team, because good teams can win basketball games. And we've seen the Cavs have won a lot of basketball games. They're 47-10. But great teams can find ways to win basketball games in different ways. And that's what the Cavs did on Sunday night. They could have easily shot 40% from three and just outscored Memphis because they've got a lot of offensive weapons, and that's who they are. That to me would have been a little bit less impressive than what they actually did, because they had to sort of, to steal a phrase from what Memphis used to be, they had to grit and grind their way through this game. And that is something that you'd like to see the Cavs do. Not that they are going to win a championship doing that. Like, they have to play their best to win a title, and this was not the best style of basketball for them. But I think that you need to be able to win games in various ways, because guess what? When the playoffs arrive, whether it's against Boston in the conference finals, or maybe it's against Indiana, Detroit, or Milwaukee in the second round, or maybe it's even against Orlando, Miami, I don't know, Brooklyn, Chicago, Atlanta, one of those teams in the play that is in the play-in currently in the first round, the Cavs are not going to be at their best offensively in every single playoff game. Like, that's just not a realistic thing to expect. Should they be more often than not playing really good offensive basketball? Yes. But every game? No, that's not a fair thing. That's not how playoff basketball works. So to be able to win a game like this is something that you would like to see be able to be something that can be translated to the postseason. We don't know if it can, but the fact that they can do this in the regular season, I think, should give you the faith that this is something that could happen in the postseason. They could theoretically win a game just like this one in the playoffs. And guess what? In the playoffs, when you win games, it doesn't matter how you do it. The only thing that matters is that you do it. Like, this was a really physical game. And I think that this, when you combine this with what the Cavs did on Friday night against the New York Knicks, where they just absolutely blew the doors off of New York, I think you have to be really, really happy with the way that this weekend went for the Cavs. I don't think it could have gone better. Of course, you would like to see Darius Garland not be injured. You'd like to see the Cavs play a little bit better offensively on Sunday against Memphis. But overall, the fact that they won two pretty big, important games, I think that when we, looked at going into the All-Star break and coming out of it, it's like, okay, there's a couple of tests. Those first four games coming out of the All-Star break, where it is not first four, the first game not counting. So sorry, Brooklyn. But getting past that Brooklyn game, the next four games after that, so you got New York, you've got Memphis, Orlando, and Boston. You look at that as, okay, this is a little bit of a testy stretch for the Cavs. The fact that they're 2-0 through it and they've won two games in two different ways, despite the fact that, again, they didn't have one of their best players. They didn't have an all-star point guard. They didn't have a guy who I think should be an all-NBA player this year. The fact that they got a win like that against a team that is number 2 in the Western Conference. Is Memphis a title contender? I don't buy that, but they're a really good team. And the Cavs found a way to win this game in a way that, maybe it was a little bit more stressful than it should have been down the stretch. But overall, I think you have to be really, really pleased with that.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Oklahoma City Thunder needed a playoff test like this game was in Minnesota.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What a game this was. Look, somebody had to lose this game. It could have been the Thunder. It was Minnesota. But overall, these are the games that make you better. A raucous environment, a nip and tuck game that had 18 lead changes, 4 ties on national television against 2 teams who feel like they can go for a run. The Thunder, of course, the Western Conference favorites, but Minnesota feels like once they get healthy as a team that just went to the conference finals, they'll be right back. They'll be right back there. So this was a critical game. For as good as the Thunder have been, and they've been fantastic, you do want to see yourself compete in these settings when things get tight, when you're not just out-efforting teams, when you're not just blowing out teams from start to finish. Because while that's great, and while that's a massive feather of the Thunder's cap, that unlike other NBA teams, they can get up for all 82. Unlike other NBA teams, they live by the 0-0 mindset. They don't just give you lip service. That's fantastic. But as you saw last year, the playoffs are much different. The playoffs, you never get to just purely out-effort teams in the playoffs. Everybody is trying with all of their might. And in this game, Minnesota treated this differently. Minnesota treated this like a playoff game, and the Thunder rose to that occasion. And there were some really bad things about this game. There were some really awesome things about this game from the Thunder's individual performance. And we're going to get into all of those, the good, the bad, the ugly. But the most important one is that they got tested, and they showed you how they can handle those tests better than they did a year ago. Now, they still have to go out there and do it, right? This was a playoff-like game, not a playoff game. But it gave you a sign of what I think is to come. So the Thunder start this game out, and it's back and forth, but the Thunder grow a 19-point lead, the biggest lead of the game. Minnesota could never get past a 7-point lead. They'd get 7, they'd get 5, 6, and then it'd creep back down. Then they go back up to 5, and they'd creep back down. And that right there is a massive difference. Because with the depth of this team, with all the different ways they can attack you, and you saw them all tonight, they can go small, they can go double big, they can have a single big. The Thunder do not have a sync lineup. Of a lineup you would realistically play in games like this, where, you know, no offense to these guys, but Jay Will gets no minutes, Ousmane Dieng gets no minutes, Dillon Jones gets no minutes. Of the combinations you can put together, there isn't one that just absolutely craters you. And a year ago, there was. I mean, this team cratered when Chet Holmgren went to the bench in that Dallas series. The fact that they can stay afloat is massive. And they couldn't stay afloat last year. Because all the Thunder did was they got punched in the mouth and they got up 19. They weren't playing particularly well at the second quarter, you know, middle of the second quarter on. They were not playing well in the third quarter, but they just kept swimming. They just kept floating along the lazy river until SGA was able to come back in and lead this team. And that's no slight to anyone on this roster. That's just the caliber of player Shea is. And every team who has had a player the caliber of Shea, all they've ever had to do was just survive. Just survive until he can come back into the game. And so the Thunder, again, had a lot go wrong. The rebounding disparity is not good. 51-43 at the very end. And there were segments of this game where it felt even worse. That's not good. To make matters worse, the turnovers was 13 all. You cannot get dominated on the glass and not make up for it with your typical huge disparity in turnovers. Like typically the Thunder will turn you over 13, 14, 15, 20 times, and they'll only have 8 themselves. And that can kind of offset the possessions you lose by the rebounding margins. That wasn't the case in this game. In the third quarter, Minnesota was shooting worse than OKC, but they made way more threes. Whenever Minnesota was kind of on that roll there in the third quarter. Like those things you have to nip away at. You have to chip away at. And then that's not been something that's harmed the Thunder through this year. We've talked all year long about how they've been at worst competitive on the boards, and they've even won the rebounding battle some this year as well. And then the turnovers, we know that this is an anomaly. But of course, it was frustrating for the Thunder to be kicking the ball all over the place, and a lot of these 13 were unforced turnovers. And some of these 13, you've got to tip your cap to Minnesota. But for the Thunder to dig deep in this and pull out this win was a gutty performance. And the things we've mentioned so far, just one of the many ways that they've changed. Another way that they've changed is you look at the shooting splits. This was everybody's worst nightmares come true, right? It was a hungry opponent. It was a talented opponent. It was national TV. And a lot of you have been in the comments wondering, can this team rise to the occasion when those are the stakes? Because you think back to that NBA Cup championship. You think back to other moments. You think back to last Thursday when this was the same team, same scenario on the road. And they've came up short in those situations. But you had Isaiah Joe with constant movement and being a movement shooter, which is a stark contrast to what he was last year. Both versions of Isaiah Joe were good three-point shooters. One version is successful against a defense that is locked in, and another version is successful by product of what the defense is displaying, right? The stationary catch and shoot stuff is partly just due to the defense not going out and contesting. The movement stuff, you can put the defense in a bind yourself. And that benefit of the early season struggles is bearing fruit right now when you see the threes that Isaiah Joe can hit. Wiggins had a stretch where he hit 3 massive timely triples. This team was not getting timely threes from anybody a season ago. If that trend continues, which from the start of the new year it has, like from the start of the new year till now, Wiggins is shooting the cover off the ball, and he shot timely big shots that you don't win this game without those threes from Aaron Wiggins. Like, that's a big change for this roster. And another big change is Alex Caruso. Caruso was stellar. What he does to connect this roster, what he does to play make offensively as a secondary playmaker is everything we talked about in the summertime. A lot of you were pretty upset at those summer podcasts whenever I would call Alex Caruso a better playmaker than Josh Giddey because you weren't hearing the context. Caruso is a better off-ball playmaker than Josh Giddey. Giddey has to play make with the ball in his hands, and he was not afforded that role because his team is too good to put him on the ball. Where Caruso thrives is his ability to connect in offense. Because he's still a threat from three, and the way he can bend the defense with cutting through the action and either providing himself as a safety net as a cutter or getting hockey assists or touch pass assists. Like, all those things just flow so much easier with Alex Caruso. I wrote about how he connects this offense on Thunder on SI. I embedded clips to perfectly illustrate what I'm talking about, but you can just watch him be that connective passer this team needs. And so that functionalization this team did not have a year ago. They were kind of winning and being the 1 seed and having a good offense in spite of, at times, lacking functionality. And so that's a massive difference from where this team was a year ago. And on the flip side, having Caruso gives you such defensive versatility. Like, yeah, this team's defense last year was good. And every metric says that they were a good defense. They weren't the best in the league as they are this year. They weren't a historically good defense as they are this year, but they were good. But they were good because they had Chet Holmgren anchoring things, and they had Lou, and they had Kaysen. And that was kind of the extent of it. Shea being an incredible two-way defender, and a two-way player. He's the best star besides Giannis, right? That can get it done on offense and defense. But now you add Caruso in the mix, and Caruso's active hands and positional versatility for a roster that has Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, You closed a game going small with J-Dub and Caruso as your front court, technically, positionally, but you're switching everything and you're causing havoc. That's just the many ways this team can beat you. So the fact that they can stay afloat, the fact that they're hitting timely threes, and the fact that they have Alex Caruso are big.